What if I told you that young, otherwise perfectly healthy people who eat the most fruits and vegetables are right now showing a significantly higher risk for lung cancer? Not smokers, not people living next to a chemical plant, but people doing exactly what we've been told to do our entire lives, eating their greens. It sounds completely backward. It sounds like a bad excuse to just eat donuts. But a massive, highly unexpected study out of the University of Southern California just dropped in April of 2026, and it is turning everything we know about the perfect diet completely upside down. Today, we are going to look under the hood of this new research. I'm going to show you the invisible passenger riding on your produce. Why the people trying the hardest to be healthy might be taking on the biggest toxic load, and the specific, science-backed way to protect your cells without giving up your favorite foods. You're going to want to hear this because the way most of us wash our apples is practically useless. If breaking down the real science behind the headlines to protect your long-term health is useful to you, hit that subscribe button so we can keep navigating this stuff together. Let's get the biggest misconception out of the way immediately. Vegetables do not cause cancer. Mother Nature isn't out to get you via broccoli. But what most people get wrong is the assumption that a healthy diet automatically equals a safe diet. We have this deeply ingrained myth that lung cancer is purely a smoker's disease, or something that only happens to guys in their 70s who worked in asbestos factories. But right now, we are seeing an emerging epidemic of lung cancer in younger, non-smoking adults. And when doctors look at these patients, they aren't finding people who live on fast food and soda. They are finding the yoga instructors, the marathon runners, the people who eat massive kale salads for lunch every single day. There is a tragic irony here. When you eat highly processed junk food, it's terrible for your heart and your waistline, sure. But ironically, that ultra-processed food has been stripped and refined so many times that there is barely any original plant matter left. When you eat a diet rich in whole grains, leafy greens, and fresh fruits, you are eating food exactly as it came out of the ground, which means you're also eating everything that was sprayed onto that ground. And then there's the supplement myth. For decades, we thought we could just outsmart poor diets by isolating the good stuff. Take beta-carotene, the antioxidant found in carrots. People thought, hey, if carrots are good, a massive pill of beta-carotene must be a shield of armor for my lungs. Except, in clinical trials with high-risk individuals, megadosing beta-carotene actually increased lung cancer rates by nearly 30%. It fueled the fire instead of putting it out. And that brings us to the actual mechanics of what is happening inside the lungs of these healthy eaters, which is where this story gets really intense. To understand this paradox, we have to talk about how conventional farming collides with your cellular biology. The danger isn't the produce. The danger is the unregulated chemical bath used to grow it. When you consume conventionally grown produce, you are often ingesting trace amounts of agricultural pesticides. Now, the FDA and agricultural boards will tell you these trace amounts are within safe limits. But your body doesn't really care about bureaucratic limits. When these bioactive chemicals enter your bloodstream, they can trigger severe oxidative stress. Imagine leaving a bicycle out in the rain. Eventually, it rusts. Oxidative stress is essentially your cells rusting from the inside out. It's chronic, low-grade inflammation. Over time, this constant chemical irritation damages the DNA specifically inside your lung tissue. And in these younger non-smokers, this cellular damage is showing up in very specific biological pathways. Researchers are looking closely at something called the EGFR mutation. Think of your cells like a car. They have a gas pedal to grow and multiply, and brakes to tell them when to stop. This pesticide-induced damage essentially jams a brick onto the gas pedal of the EGFR pathway. The lung cells start mutating and multiplying out of control. And because the brakes are broken, a tumor forms. It's a perfect storm of invisible chemical exposure hitting a vulnerable genetic pathway. And the frustrating part? You thought you were just doing your body a favor by ordering the side salad. If this is the kind of biological deep dive your doctor never had the time to tell you about, the like button is right there below the video. The data from this USC study isn't just a slight statistical anomaly. The numbers are jarring. Researchers looked at 187 patients diagnosed with young-onset lung cancer, meaning under the age of 50. The researchers used something called the Healthy Eating Index, or HEI, to score their diets. The average American scores a fairly dismal 57 on the scale. These young lung cancer patients, they scored a 65. They were eating 13% healthier than the rest of the country. Let that sink in. They were consuming an average of 4.3 servings of dark green vegetables and legumes every single day, well above the national average. And perhaps the most alarming statistic of all, 78% of this young-onset lung cancer cohort were women. This isn't a coincidence. This is a very specific demographic getting hit very hard. When Dr. Jorge Niva, the lead medical oncologist on this study, looked at this data, he openly warned that our agricultural practices might be creating an entirely unknown environmental risk factor. But how does someone with a pristine diet and a gym membership end up in an oncology ward without ever seeing it coming? Well, the warning signs for this specific type of cellular mutation are incredibly sneaky. Because these patients are young, fit, and generally bursting with vitality, doctors almost never suspect cancer. They look at a 35-year-old woman who eats organic quinoa and does Pilates, and cancer isn't even on the checklist. So the symptoms get dismissed. A persistent, nagging cough gets written off as seasonal allergies or maybe adult-onset asthma. Mild shortness of breath after a normal workout gets blamed on just being a little overly tired or stressed. Even subtle chest or back pain gets misdiagnosed as a pulled muscle from lifting weights. By the time someone actually demands a chest scan, the cancer has had months, sometimes years, to advance. And here is where it gets incredibly interesting for that 78% female statistic. The USC study noted an association with oral contraceptives. Roughly 65% of the women in one of the specific tumor mutation groups reported using them. This is opening up an entirely new doorway into how synthetic hormones might interact with agricultural chemicals to create a uniquely hostile environment in the lungs. Now, to be completely fair to the science, there is a massive debate right now between public health researchers and big agriculture. It's a classic David versus Goliath standoff. The agriculture industry argues that this study shows correlation, not causation. They say, sure, these patients ate more vegetables, but you didn't test their urine for specific pesticides. And they are right that biomonitoring is the next step. But frankly, you and I do not have time to wait 10 years for big ag to admit their chemicals might be a problem. We need to protect ourselves right now. So, what is the protocol here? Do we just throw out the spinach and live on saltines? Absolutely not. Quitting vegetables would be a disaster for your metabolic health, your gut microbiome, and your heart. We just have to get incredibly smart about how we source and prep our food. First, you have to practice strategic organic sourcing. You don't need to buy organic avocados or bananas. They have thick skins that protect the edible parts, but you must memorize the dirty dozen. These are the crops known for the absolute highest pesticide loads: spinach, kale, strawberries, grapes, and apples. If you are eating leafy greens every day, they need to be organic. The slight bump in your grocery bill is an investment in your cellular health. Second, let's talk about washing produce. Running a head of lettuce under the tap for 2 seconds while staring into the void of your kitchen does absolutely nothing. Water alone will not break down these chemical compounds. Science shows that the most effective way to strip pesticide residue off the skin of your produce is a baking soda soak. Fill a bowl with water, add a teaspoon of baking soda, submerge your fruits and vegetables, and let them sit for 12 to 15 minutes. This creates an alkaline environment that actively degrades the chemical bonds of the pesticides. Then, rinse them off. It takes a little extra time, but it works. And finally, get your antioxidants from real, whole foods, not from a plastic bottle of mega-dosed supplements. Your body knows how to process the complex matrix of a real blueberry. It does not know what to do with a massive, isolated chemical extraction of a single vitamin. And as we've seen, forcing those high doses into your lungs can actually trigger the exact mutations you are trying to prevent. The ultimate takeaway here isn't fear, it's empowerment. The health and wellness industry loves to sell us the idea of a perfect, clean diet, but they rarely talk about the invisible baggage that comes with our food supply. By upgrading how you source your greens and taking 15 minutes to properly neutralize those chemicals at the sink, you get to keep all the incredible longevity benefits of a plant-rich diet without letting the agricultural industry run a chemistry experiment on your lungs. If you want to keep cutting through the noise and stay in this conversation about what is really driving our health, make sure to hit subscribe. And if you're curious about what else might be secretly driving cellular inflammation, click the video on the screen right now where we break down the hidden triggers in your morning routine. I'll see you over there.